Hello, welcome to another YouTube video, our first book review. Now, I'm sitting here recording and I realized I didn't do an intro, so thank you guys for clicking on the video. Thank you guys for showing the love. I hope you guys enjoy this. This is Kid Dro and our very first book review. Let's go. The majority of the time that I read is because I see something that might be interesting, something that I could learn from. There's sometimes that I dive into some fiction stuff or some stuff more for entertainment, for example, manga. But today's focus will mostly be on the books that I read within the last year. Quick disclaimer, two of these books I did not read within the last year, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Shack, but the rest fit in the category. So last year I wanted to read more and I ended up reading like 2 books. This year I once again did the challenge of wanting to read a book a month at least. And we're now in June. I believe I have completed that goal so far, but these are all the books that I read, not in this order, but we will start with Atomic Habits. Now, this one I think it's very helpful, very useful. This book is mostly about habits, how they happen, good or bad. Now, it goes into detail of how some of these habits come to be and how potentially you could change them and get out of them if they're bad or not good for you, or you want to change them. So I think it's really interesting, really good. I've heard that there's other books out there that are similar but are also helpful in different kinds of way. I will look into those, one of those being this one. But so far, to me, this is a good book, a good read. I do recommend it for people who do struggle to get out of certain habits, people who are trying to develop good habits, and then being to identify either or. Rich Dad Poor Dad. Now, this book was one of the first books that I read out of all of these here. And it was actually a gift from an uncle. And I was, I think, a freshman or a sophomore in college. And I think it's actually a good read for people that have basically zero to no understanding of accounting or business in general in terms of what is an asset, what is a liability, what is an expense. So this book helps a lot with that, and then it makes you want to try to think in a different perspective of how to deal with money. So it tries to break down the use of money that is coming in, whether it's from a job or something that is free cash flow, or like something that's more passive. So trying to develop that is mostly what it focuses on. Now, it's a heavy on real estate, which is not for everybody, but it does talk about other things as well too that might bring you money in a passive way. So passive income without you having to work, which is what I think I got the most out of this book. That's the best. And it's knowing also that through passive income is how you develop wealth, an actual wealth that is not necessarily a wealth that you're abundant in wealth, but you have enough wealth to live on month to month without having to work or put any more effort into a business or something that you've developed because of the passive income. So if you're interested in something like that, I definitely do recommend it. I think it's pretty simple, easy read compared to the same to like also with Atomic Habits. Both of these are pretty simple, easy reads that I do recommend for people who are trying to, understand things in a different perspective towards their goals, whether it's habit creation or passive income creation. The Shack. This is out of these two, this is the first one that's a fiction book. And it's a story about a dad and his struggle with a big, huge loss and how God plays a role in him overcoming that. And it's a lot about being able to let go of resentment, letting go of hate, letting go of those things that stick with you after like a big, impactful, negative situation in life. So I do recommend it. If you're religious, I think you will enjoy it. Don't look at it in a way to teach you like, oh, this is how religion works, this is how God works. I think it's just a really good, interesting story. And to me, what caught me the most was the images and the way that the author put the words in the book to let you create that image in your mind was amazing. Beyond Good and Evil. This is the first philosophical book that I read, and I didn't know the huge controversy behind Nietzsche. I think now that I read this book, I can see why, and I think some of it was from a lot of his support of the government groups in Germany, which I think were not good. I will not comment further on that because I did not do research on the author specifically, so I'm just gonna touch on the book itself. I think it had really good points. I think some of the stuff I fully disagree with. I think he talks very negatively about women. He talks very negatively about being open-minded to certain groups. He wants to be open-minded only to his ideas, and he is very naturalistic. So I think that's where it mostly comes from. But I think it does create a good way to think in the sense that he pushes for the thought or the idea that everybody has bias, and it's better to be able to step out of your bubbles and your circles to remove some of that bias. So this book was a tough read. I think it took me like 4 to 6 months to finish it, but I read other books along the way, and I think that's the only way that I was able to get through it. But do I recommend it? Not necessarily. I think philosophy books are not that interesting to me right now, but I will be getting more, and I will continue to read them. If you're into philosophy and you haven't read this, I think this is a must read. I think it's very interesting. He has a very unique way of thinking that is different from others, and I think that's why he's known mostly around the philosophers and philosophy books. Spanish book. Now, the reason that I got this book, that I started reading it, was because of the actor. I saw the movie with Marvel movie and Black Panther with him, and he started making his rounds around social media, and he came up into my life in social media, you could say. And there was some controversy around him later on with women issues that I'm not quite sure what ended up happening, but if you care about that, you should look that up. But this book is really good. It gave me a lot of perspective on the classism and racism, compare like classism versus racism that happens in Mexico, and what he experienced in the movie industry, and how it affected him and the people around him, and how sometimes we lie to ourselves as Hispanics, Latinos, or whatever we want to say about the Hispanic Spanish-speaking community or Mexico itself, and how there's a lot of isms in there, whether it's racism, classism, whatever it is, sexism, things like that, that are impacting and that impacted us and we didn't even know. So this book, in terms of that, was very eye-opening. It's anecdotal, it's his perspective. It's not something that talks about necessarily just studies and facts and things like that, but it's about his story and what he experienced and how he sees it and why he thinks it happens. He does bring up some studies that backs up his claims. So it's a good read with a good start to something that you might want to get into. And last but not least, Sapiens. Now, Sapiens, I guess you could argue, is philosophical. I don't think so, because of the style of writing. I think that's why I struggled mostly with Beyond Good and Evil, is the style of writing. I think this one's more informational. This one was recommended to me from a friend after we were having a discussion / argument / conversation with another friend about religion and about the different things that comes from the Bible. And I think I haven't asked him, I should, but from my perspective and what I think, my opinion on this recommendation coming from him specifically was to give me a different perspective and a different idea where the world started, how it started, where it came from. This is more of a not a creation beginning type of idea. It's more of an evolutionary and Big Bang Theory, I think, perspective. It talks about more, but I think that's mostly what the book focuses on and is talking about. That the creation or us humans is mostly coming from not a place where a God exists. So that being said, it was very interesting. It did have a lot of things that I didn't know about. It, if anything, I think it opened my eyes more to science being faith-based more than I thought. And I already kind of had that idea, but what I mean by that is that I thought science was mostly about facts. But from reading this and now more recent things and conversation studies that I've done on the topic, I've noticed that science also has to come from some inferences, some conclusions that are not based on fact necessarily. It's based on beliefs, is based on what quote unquote might make the most sense, which I guess you could argue is factual. But I think it's more closely related to religion, science being like a religion in a way of having some faith in certain things. And that to me made me lean more into why I think it's still fair to believe that a God created us, that we come from a creation, from a higher being. Me being obviously Catholic, Christian, that's what I believe, that's what I think. But this is definitely a good read. It was also very hard. Also, it's very long. It's the longest out of all of these books, but it's actually interesting. I do recommend it for people who might, just trying to see a different perspective on the history of humans and humankind. It was very eye-opening to some of the things that throughout humanity we did that created the world that we live in today. And I think that's what stuck with me the most. It was very impactful, very eye-opening, and I do recommend it. I think Atomic Habits might be the most impactful for your everyday life if you struggle with habit creating and maybe negative habits that you're trying to get rid of. So this one specifically for that. And I would say then, if you speak Spanish, obviously this one. This one to me, being Mexican and growing up in the US, and the things that you hear from your family, you hear from your friends when you go to Mexico, the things that you see, it's eye-opening to that and where it might come from and how it can be negatively impacting you or your family or the people around you. So very quickly, I did not get to review this book because I didn't have it in my possession at the moment, but I already finished reading it, and to me was one of the quickest reads I've had this year. Finished this book in about a week, and it's Tuesdays with Morrie. This book, out of all of them, it would beat my previous suggestions. I would pick this one above the rest of them. And reason being is I think it teaches a lot of important things from a perspective of somebody who's already gone through life, talking to somebody who is probably in their midlife, in their 30s, early 20s type of life, where they're questioning what path to take, what decisions to make, and their career decisions, life decisions, whatever kind of decisions, and things that might cloud our judgment or our thinking majority of the time within these years. I think I can relate to it a lot in that sense, and that's why I loved it. And I think that there's a lot of lessons to learn both for young people and for older people as well. And so this book suggested the best book out of all the ones I've read so far. This is the only one that I have the next book for. So this one I can't tell you much about. I've only finished the first one, and it's interesting. These are all fiction, so this is my fiction side of reading. I read the manga, I watch some of the anime sometimes, but I try to focus mostly on manga that I have not watched the anime for, because it's a new story, it's a different thing, and like that I'm able to not know what's going to happen. But this is really good, and this is the same artist that makes Monster. Now Monster, 4 volumes in, This one is really good. It's about a doctor who saves a kid's life, and this kid ends up being, quote unquote, a monster, somebody who is spreading a lot of bad things in life. So then this doctor goes on to find this kid to try to see why he's doing what he's doing, and try to figure out how to solve the issues that he's having. So in terms of that, the anime for this one's already out as well. So if you want to watch the anime instead of reading the manga, that's fine. But the manga is really, really good. And last but not least, this is a more recent volume that has been, more recent manga that has been coming out. Kagurabachi is actually I haven't been reading manga for that long, but I have been watching a lot of anime. Now this manga, out of the three, to me has the best artwork, the best pieces. In terms of the story, it's developing, and I'm only 2 volumes in. So I have the next 2 volumes, but they're in Japanese, so I can't read them yet, and I'm probably not gonna be able to read them before the volumes come out in English. But this one, in terms of the art, the fighting, I can't wait for this to get animated. I think it's gonna be a great anime to watch. But the story also is really good. It's the basic story in terms of like revenge. So it's like a revenge story. This guy loses his dad and he's trying to avenge his father's death and the people that killed him. But it's bringing some interesting ideas of how that's happening. It focuses around swords, specifically the swords that his father used to make, that he was learning to make, and the powers that come with it. So obviously it's fiction, and I do recommend it. Out of these 3, if you want something that looks good while you're reading it, like the artwork, the design, all of that, then I recommend this one. If you want it for the story, then I can't tell you for 20th Century Boys yet, but this one is a really good one. So that is all the books that I've been reading, and that ends and concludes our first book review. Hopefully I was able to inspire you guys to read, whether it was one of these books or not, or something that maybe you've been wanting to read already. I know that sometimes starting to read can be a little bit difficult. You can set different goals for yourself. Like I have a much broader goal, which is reading a book a month. I think that's much easier compared to reading 10 pages a day or 15 pages a day. It might push me a little bit more if I'm running behind on books per month. But since I also read manga, I read along, probably I'm reading 2 to 3 different books at the same time. And that kind of makes up for the fact that, maybe I'm backed up a month, or end up taking longer to read a specific book because it's a harder read. But hopefully I do encourage you guys to read. I do think that everybody should read. I think that, some people read more than others, and that's fine. If you can do a book a year, that's perfectly fine. As long as you keep reading, I think it's important to help with sympathizing sometimes. If you're reading fiction, a lot of the times novels can help you sympathize with others because it kind of puts you in the shoes of the main character in the story. And usually they're going through a struggle or something and that they're trying to figure out. And it helps people empathize and sympathize with others about those things by reading those stories. Obviously, there's really good books out there for development and everyday life. Those specifically are the ones that I like to read the most, because I like to understand how maybe a human works, how he could potentially change his habits. For example, Atomic Habits. So it's all of those things that to me are the most interesting. But then I do tap in and a little bit into the fiction stuff through the manga. And yeah, so let me know if you guys enjoyed this book review. I am going through 3 other books right now that I will then drop a review on for you guys later. If you do enjoy these kind of videos, let me know. I do enjoy going over these books or these kind of videos because I think that there's some very interesting books out there that I still have yet to read that I see people talking about, and that's why I end up reading them. If I'm able to do that for you, I would be very happy. And so yeah, let me know if any books that you guys are reading that you guys recommend. And if you do end up reading one of these books, don't forget to come back and let me know what you guys think. Or if you've already read any of these books, Let me know what your thoughts are on the book. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.